Welcome to another episode of Science from Your Sofa. I'm Emily.
And I'm Kristen.
And this week we'll be covering the topic of stormwater.
To fully understand stormwater, we have to first understand the difference between an impervious surface and a pervious surface. So a pervious surface is something that water can soak through. Things like dirt, grass, soil. So I have a little soil sample right here, and you can see when we add water to it, the water can go right through it. So that means it's pervious. Impervious surfaces are things that water can't go through. So hard surfaces such as pavement, concrete, buildings, driveways, sidewalks, those things the water just flows right over. So right here I have an example of a rock. And so when we put water on that rock, it flows off of it. It doesn't go through it. Now, not all hard surfaces are impermeable. So here I have a permeable chunk of pavement. And so when we do put the water in it, it does go right through. So even though it's hard, it has pores, so water can go through it.
So what is stormwater? After a rainfall or storm, water that falls on a pervious surface can infiltrate into the ground, eventually making its way to groundwater that can help recharge the lake or any local aquifer. Now, rain that falls on an impervious surface cannot infiltrate into the ground, so instead it flows along the surface, potentially picking up pollutants on its way, and makes its way down to the lowest point in the watershed, which in our case is Lake George.
So now that we know what stormwater is, what does it look like on the land? And so here in front of me, I have our watershed model. So a watershed is the land around our water bodies that drain down into them. So when it rains, wherever rain hits this land, it's eventually going to drain down into the lake. So as you can see, when it rains here on our model, the water's just going off the roads, it's going off the land, it's going off our driveways, and it's all headed down to that lower point of Lake George. Now you can see that we have a nice clear Lake George. Our streams are nice and clear. That's because we don't have any pollution in our watershed. So when we don't have pollution on the land, that stormwater is not bringing any pollution down into our lake.
So how does polluted stormwater have a negative effect on Lake George? Sediments can cloud water, affecting plants, fish, and other aquatic life. Fertilizers can cause an increase in algal growth, including harmful algal blooms, which Lake George has never had. Bacteria and pathogens can make water unsafe for drinking and swimming. Debris, such as plastic bags, can suffocate or disable aquatic life, such as ducks or turtles. Household hazardous waste, such as pesticides, paints, or motor oil, can poison aquatic life. Road salt from the winter increases chloride levels in the lake.
So how does this polluted stormwater get to the lake? Well, here we have again our watershed model. Now it looks a little bit more realistic this time. So we have pollution in our watershed. We have things like animal waste. We have some cows here on our farm. We're out here with our dog and have some dog waste out in our yard. We have a nice green golf course, so fertilizers on our lawns. This home just fertilized as well. And we have some bare soil. So we're clearing a lot over here. We have some open stream banks without any trees, nice big open field. And we also have some cars. Now, our cars don't always work the same way. And so this car here might be leaking some gas and oil. And well, this home, we're not quite sure what happened there, but they had some kind of mess in their driveway. And so we have lots of pollution in our watershed. Well, when it's not raining, that pollution's just hanging out. But what happens when it rains? Where does the stormwater come into play? And so when it rains, what's going to happen? As we can start to see, it's raining up here in the mountains, and that fertilizer, that dirt from those mountains that didn't have any trees, it's heading down into our stream. And those streams are vectors down into our lake. Let's see what happens when we have a little bit more rain. So over here at this house, they had a lot of stuff in their driveway. Well, they're right by a storm drain. And so our storm drains are then roots down to our lake as well. And so all that pollution and water heads into a storm drain, heads down into our stream, which is heading into our lake. And if you look closely, our lake is starting to change in clarity. So as it rains, all this pollution is eventually going to make its way down to that lower point of Lake George. Obviously, the intensity of our rains also have a big impact, so we kind of had a light rain. What happens when we have those torrential downpours? So as you can see, the more rain, the more stormwater we have, the more pollution that's getting picked up into the lake. And so at our lower point of the lake, we can see what kind of impact that's having on Lake George. It's having an impact on our clarity. You can see the water's getting greener from that fertilizer. Those nutrients are causing algae growth in our lake. That's going to have a big impact on the life out there, and it's also going to change our ability to use Lake George as drinking water and swimming and recreation as well.
How can you prevent polluted stormwater from entering Lake George? Well, the first thing is that you want to try and minimize the impermeable surfaces that you have around. If you have to pave somewhere, consider using a porous pavement. Also, if you live right on the lake, make sure there is a plant barrier, also called a rain garden, in between your house and a lake so that stormwater can't flow into Lake George unfiltered. You can visit the Lake George Association website for a list of native plants that work great in a rain garden. Also, if you have a storm drain by your house or you see a storm drain that is covered in leaves and debris, clean that off so the storm drain can function properly. And last but not least, limit your use of fertilizers and pesticides. These can really impact the quality of our water bodies. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode on stormwater. The LGA has done a lot of great projects in the past years to prevent polluted stormwater from entering Lake George. You can check those out on our website.
Be sure to keep sending us your questions for our future episodes of Science from Your Sofa.